Hello and welcome to another episode of The Decided Heart Effect, where we invite you every week to take action and be inspired to live with a decided heart. I'm Hillary and I'm coming at you from my parents' basement, not in a bad way, just coming for a visit for the first time in almost 2 years. Yay, vaccinations, yay. And my lovely co-host Sonia, woohoo, she's still in Cali. And we are joined today by Jill Ann Castle, who is, she is an adventurer. She's a writer. She's an orator. She's a Pathfinder. She's an inspiration junkie. She is a DMD warrior mama. We're going to talk about what that means in a minute. And she is a hope maker. It's so true. She brings so much hope to the world. She has 1,000,001 jobs. I am not even joking. When you go through and hear about everything she does, 1,000,001. And I'm going to let her tell you about that. But I think I'm safe to say that her favorite one is being the mama to two extraordinary young men, Anthony and Oliver. Thank you for joining us, Jill.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about, catch our listeners up on kind of who you are, what it means to be a DMD warrior, and why are you in a camper right now?
You can make me talk about that right away.
Right away.
Okay. Yes. Why am I in a she shed camper? So I have a son. I have two sons, and one of my sons has Duchenne muscular dystrophy, which is a progressive muscle disorder. He also has autism a little bit. We like to tell him he has a little bit of autism. And my other son is 19 and a college student and just probably one of the most kindest, wonderful people in the whole world. I live in a camper because a few years ago, I decided to give up my house in Scottsdale and all of the fancy things. And I actually moved onto a ranch property with my ex-husband and his beautiful wife, we call Mama Two. And we decided to work as a team to care for Anthony because his needs had progressed. And so we all take care of him as a family unit with our other son, Oliver, so that we all have a life balance and we all have time to pursue our own things and take care of him. And he's happy being around his whole family together rather than having us separate and shifting him back and forth.
Wow, amazing. You know, we've studied all the work of where you are now and cannot imagine you must have experienced 1,000,000 decided heart effect moments. And I mean, just to clarify, many of us have decided heart experiences. These are experiences where they either create a shift in our thinking and our mindset, or they don't. Like we just ignore them and they pass us by. The effect part, decided heart effect, is when we take action on these experiences. And we're going to challenge you a little bit, Jill. If you were to look back in one of your most significant decided heart effect moments that led you to where you are today, can you recall, I'm sure there's like 20 of them, but can you recall a significant decided heart effect that shifted this trail of where you are?
So I guess I can't really say there's one moment. I think it's been more of a chipping away. And it's like onion, you peel back the layers. One of the big moments, obviously, was when Anthony got diagnosed. He was 3 and he's 21 now. And for Duchenne, that's actually quite older because we were told we were going to lose him between 12 and 20. And obviously, we decided at that time that we were not going to settle with that information. We were going to go out and try to change the timeline, which we have. Contributed to the timeline being hopefully a little longer than that, but we never know. And so that was one of the big moments, but there's been so many. 12 years ago, I decided to get sober. And ever since then, I've been on a spiritual quest and journey. The last 2 years have been very profound for me in the way of waking up. So I wouldn't say there's one moment or one event. Sometimes the shift happens when I least expect it. I'll be trying to make changes, and then I'll let go and go about my business and have a kind of an awakening out of the blue. So it's chipping away at it in the ongoing process, I think.
Sure.
It's so interesting because you talk about a letting go and an acceptance process, and yet by the same token, you know, had you accepted what you were told from the beginning for Anthony and what the world was telling you to accept, there's a lot of a million amazing things, including you have an ongoing mission to help all of the DMD, you know, mamas and kids and families. And I know that you have a huge movement in work as far as opening up the medical things that are available as well. But also, even in the abilities, Anthony, for those who don't know, Anthony has his own movie. I mean, let's just call it like it is. You happen to live with a movie star.
I do.
I do. And that started, well, the movie came out when he was 14, or it happened when he was 14. Tell us about going from, okay, you get this diagnosis, you know that what's going to happen is that pretty soon there's going to be a wheelchair involved and maybe life is going to be limited. But you said, no, actually you didn't say, Anthony said, no. Tell us about that.
I really love that you brought up the acceptance thing, because you're right. It has unfolded into something different. I wasn't good at accepting life on life's terms at all back when he was diagnosed. And now that I think about that, I'm kind of grateful that I wasn't. Maybe the journey unfolded exactly the way it was supposed to be, because back then I was not good at accepting that. And thank goodness, because I got him in, he was the first patient number 1 in a Duchenne trial, first trial ever for a working drug. And I got him in the front line of all of the resources, educationally and medically, but at the expense of a little bit of my mental health. I wasn't entirely well, but I was extremely driven. And so when I look back at the journey, now that you mention it, it's very possible that went exactly the way it was supposed to be, because had I been the way I am now, I don't know as I would have been aggressive and gotten him as much help as I did. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Like at this point, it's about the meaning I assign to it. And I'm unsure, you know, I'm more in acceptance of reality now. But yeah, through his journey, because of the little piece of autism, he's very good at living in the moment. It's always about, well, what's next to look forward to? So he does perseverate on the future in that sense, like what adventures next, what can we get me to go do? But he's also at the same time simultaneously very grounded in the sense that, you know, I'm not going to be able to walk. Well, I guess, you know, today we're going to go do this fun thing. So I'm not really worried about that too much. So we really kept him mostly in the day, although he tries to always keep us on the next adventure. But even that, you know, we're talking about it every day. So he has something to look forward to. He's always happy. He's always kind of centered. He reminds us to stay in the moment. A lot of parents, when they would get diagnosed, they'd be 3 and be told they're going to lose their son between 12 and 20. And they're living with one foot in that world of loss and grief. And I realized how insane that was, because all that we have is uncertainty. None of us know what's going to happen tomorrow. So I realized that was literally the definition of insanity, to be living somewhere else in something that hasn't even happened yet. So it's definitely been an unfolding of learning how to take precautions and be aggressive about doing the best that we can for the future. And then pushing that aside and really, really focusing on the present, because that's really honestly all that's real. Everything else is just sort of made up, you know, because we really don't know what's going to happen.
In a trailer or a report of Anthony's adventure, I am, you know, and as a mother as well, I'm so curious about the moment you accepted Anthony's declaration, like, I want to climb, I'm going to hike down the Grand Canyon and I'm going to touch that water, the river. So let's make that happen. And of course it's like, oh my God, it's amazing. That's so courageous. But as a mother hearing that, I am just so curious, what was that like for you to receive or not receive at that time, that declaration from Anthony?
It was amazing because he's so intuitive, right? And he knew he was about to stop walking and he was going into a wheelchair. I mean, he could take a handful of steps and then needed a chair. And so at that moment, instead of talking about the wheelchair that we had to introduce into the home, all he could talk about was us carrying him down into the Grand Canyon. And so it was a time that was supposed to be very sad for parents. I think it's more sad for parents because boys are in their bodies from the beginning. So this progression is just a little bit different for them. It's more gradual. But for us parents, it's such a loss, right? A loss of the life we thought we were going to have, the kid that we hoped, would live forever, that kind of thing. So he wanted us to take him down and carry him. And so I was really just shifted into focused on the logistics of making that happen for him. I never say no about his adventures. But what happened was back then I was sort of full of ego and self-centeredness. And that's sort of how I got all those things done because I was operating on that level. And it started to shift my heart because what happened in the canyon, what's happened so much since, is I realized having all these people came out of the woodwork to help when we said we were going to do this. And that's the real story. The real story is not this adventurous kid that's the great preliminary story, right? That's why they wanted to do a documentary on it. But what you watch unfold is all these people that want to be a part of it for so many reasons and for their own reasons. And they come and they would show up and people would show up for practice that we'd never met. We don't even know how they heard about it. They'd want to just participate in any way that they could. And I had this really profound moment for myself where I realized he wasn't mine. He was everyone's. I had been carrying on like he was sort of my burden to bear. And I was on my cross and I was going to get him this and get him that and be this big hero and have this hero's journey. And like I said, it was a little egotistical and self-centered, which to give myself a break was really for self-preservation because I was heartbroken a lot of the time. But then when I let all these people in and realized that he was everybody's to share. And when I did that, it shifted and changed everything for me because it was all about what I could support and bring to the table. It wasn't about me on that level anymore. And I let the heartbreak in and it was okay. It didn't break me. It made everything more beautiful and made these moments that we have so incredible and so special that maybe that's what his life is for. I mean, maybe it's not about how long we have him. It's, maybe he doesn't need to be here for 80 years to make this big impact. He's touching so many people's lives and making such big changes. Even the people that would watch us walk past. We recently took him to Bryce and Zion because that was the next adventure. He wanted to do the Narrows in Zion, which no wheelchair's ever been down to. So, he kind of made history again with that. And just watching the people that we impacted walking by, carrying him. And people would stop us and tell us their stories. Oh, my sister's child just got diagnosed with a disability and she thinks that she'll never be able to do anything. And watching you, we know that that's not true. And we met a young father with a young man with cerebral palsy at the top. And he watched Anthony go by and he said, oh, that reminds me of my son's favorite hero, this kid from Phoenix that has this movie out. And I was like, that's him. And he's like, that's the only reason I have my son here at Zion is because of that movie. And wanted to meet my ex-husband because he had inspired him as a father, And that's what Anthony's life is about. It's not about Duchenne. It's not about his limitations. It's about all of us learning that this is everybody's. This is everybody's if we're open to it. And so that's been a that's been a big deal. That's been a big deal for us.
It's a huge, it reminds me of the Marianne Williamson when she has it in her, who am I to shine? Who are you not to shine? Right. And when you shine, you invite others to do the same.
Yeah.
And what I think is there's so many people. The funny thing is that, the Big Leap, the book, The Big Leap, he talks about the upper limiting problem. And the funny thing is nowhere in the upper limiting problem does it say physical. It's all mental. It's the stories we tell ourselves. It's the talk track. It's the not enoughs. It's the too muches. It's not for me. And I think I love what you're saying, because Anthony and the rest of us who take the challenge, who do extraordinary things, and sometimes extraordinary things are things like forgiveness or whatever it might be. When we do extraordinary things, we are helping other people also shift and see and believe and create a decided heart moment in their own lives, potentially.
Well, and just the profound effect, like I always say I have one son with Duchenne, but I have two sons that are affected by Duchenne, right? Because we don't talk about Oliver as much because he's not Anthony, but Oliver's impact on the world has already been extraordinary, and the way he's shaped as a human being, and not just because of Anthony, but because who he was to begin with and who he's been to begin with. And then having all these experiences on top of it, he's going on to become something that's going to be profoundly effective to everyone around him. We've all changed. Everybody around us has changed. He's just brought that awareness to everybody. So I think if you can be open and let it and realize it's the stories we tell ourselves, right? I was a huge fan of, I didn't like reality. So I used to shift and make up stories and assign meanings that weren't necessarily the reality, just because I couldn't cope. And I think the beginning place of healing and having an extraordinary life is the starting point, is accepting reality. Because once you accept life on life's terms, then you can open your eyes and see what's really there. If you're so busy creating what you think it should be, right, you're missing the real story. And I think that's what I really woke up to, and that's the message I try to share, because what you're in, no matter how hard or painful it is, it's also keeping you alive and awake to what's actually right in front of you. And I think at that point, that's when you can see the real beauty of what you're supposed to be shown,
Yeah, for sure. I resonated when you mentioned, and accepting what isn't, the embracing uncertainty. And, I think I can definitely relate, like control is certainty. And if I can control these things, and if I can create a checklist, like the logistical part, that's a coping mechanism, and it feels good because it's certain. But this transformation that you've kind of revealed is, wait, what's real is uncertain. We don't know what's coming. And I know Anthony is part of that journey, like, Mom, let it go. We're doing this today. And then you said something about that there's beauty in the uncertainty. Can you describe that a little bit?
Well, yeah, when I stopped trying to, and I still do, it's a work in progress every day, right? And some days I'm better at it than others. But when I overall stopped trying to control everything, because I realized it was an unwellness. I mean, it's not real. I mean, I think we try to control little things because we know we can't control the big things, right? Mm-hmm. And I think I shifted how I talked about it. Instead of talking about it like uncertainty, I talked about it like the mystery of life. And I try to go about it. I don't do it successfully, obviously, all the time, but my intention is to go about it with curiosity rather than control. Like, why is that happening? And I wonder what that means. And the other thing is never knowing if something's good or not. Like, we'll assign something will happen. Oh, that's bad. Is it? Is it bad? Because if we just wait and see, great things might come of it. Is it? We don't know that yet. So I think it's more of a pausing and looking at things with a curious eye, constantly having to box it up and package it so you're comfortable. And I think it is about being comfortable with being uncomfortable. I think that has been a major part. And like I said, I do not do it successfully or gracefully every day, but it is my intention to try to keep bringing myself back there. And after years of practice, it gets a little easier to get back there. When I'm sideways, I get uncomfortable really fast now, where I used to live sideways and not even notice.
Yeah. Wow.
I think it's so important. I love the idea of living with dissonance. I think is so, we've been taught that when we're uncomfortable, we're supposed to do something about it. So we try to figure out, do I eat because do I drink because I'm uncomfortable? What do I do to numb the discomfort? And yet it is, I love your idea. We had a guest that one time said, and we've loved it ever since. When you have the feeling, you invite the feeling into tea. And you say, sit down, feeling. Why am I feeling this way? What are you doing? How are you serving me? And you have the little conversation. And then when you're done, you say, okay, now you may leave because I know what I need to know, And
Absolutely.
I love that. I really, and I think it's so important for us. I know you grew up in a skiing family as well, or surrounded by people who ski. And I love the analogy, we get to the top of the hill and we think that we're supposed to point our skis downhill and just go, right? And one side, we might hit a tree and then we'll die. And the other side, we're going to go to safety. But that's not how you ski. Anyone who skis, that's not how you ski. You go across the hill and then you look for your next turn and you don't look ahead, you look for your next turn. And I feel like that's so much of what it's like. Okay, yes, we can look far enough ahead to know that we're going to Zion, but that's our next turn. And then we'll take care of the next thing after that.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great analogy of that. I'm going to carry that with me. So thank you. When I work with new parents that just get the diagnosis, I tell them the same thing. 1 year. Make a 1-year medical plan, no more, because you don't know in 2 years what research is coming down the pipeline or what treatment or what your son's options are going to be. And so, you'll get parents of a 3-year-old that are looking at what it's going to look like when they stop walking it. For Anthony, it was almost 15. I mean, your world's going to look so different by then. So I'm always guiding them one year at a time. Make a medical plan for 1 year, and that's it. That's all you got. And that's even really just being proactive. So I try to do it emotionally and spiritually too. And I liked what you said about inviting feelings in, especially as women, we're taught that. I was taught anyway, because I was in a male dominated family. So I was basically taught, that your emotions and your feelings are kind of a weakness, and so I did develop a lot of ego and for a lot of self-protective reasons, also because I was taught that that's just the way you move forward in life. And it took me years to unravel that, because now my decisions are heart-centered and my feelings are actually a guide of what's actually going on. And to just feel uncomfortable and ask why instead of how to fix it. Like you said, why am I uncomfortable? What's this trying to tell me? And it's just a whole different way to live. And I've found for me, it's much more effective, and I make much better decisions navigating things that way.
So what are your adventures coming up? I mean, I know Bryce just happened, right?
Bryce and Zion just happened, and it took me a couple years to pull it together because of my energy and my motivation. He'd been bugging me for a couple years. He had actually summited Camelback here, that's a huge feat. There is a Facebook page that you can look up and you can watch the videos.
Oh, cool.
I mean, we're literally handing him hand over hand up rocks. I mean, he's just done some really incredible, and he water skis and does all kinds of other crazy outdoor things. So we did Bryson's Eye, and it took quite a bit of coordinating. And we, like I said, we always have this magic that happens because we have this young man in our life who came out to help him on Camelback and got so inspired by the fire department that he went on to become, a hotshot wildland firefighter in California. So he brought his whole crew to carry him in Zion. And I mean, I'm still recovering from that. So Anthony usually comes up with his next adventure like on the way home from that one. And I was just like, oh, can we have a breather? But his next adventure, honestly, because the physical stuff is getting harder and harder. Like, he can only stay in his hiking chair now for 4 hours at a time, not all day like he used to. So those are kind of dwindling down a little bit. And his next adventure, he really wants to live on his own without his mom. He calls it Anthony's Mansion. And he wants to just have a bunch of dudes that live together and, eat crappy food and play video games late at night. And so we're working on some ideas nonprofit wise and things like that, because there aren't a lot of homes and opportunities like that for people with disabilities. So it's possible that's our next adventure. But again, I always have to rest up and I have to get in the right spiritual space to make it happen, because he doesn't ask for anything small or easy. Can't just say, can we go, somewhere close, or, it's always this grand thing that's just, I gotta sit on that for a little bit and see how that's gonna organically come to fruition, I think, with a lot of help. But if I wait, somebody will walk in the door and suggest something and I'll go, oh, there it is. Or I'll meet somebody along the way that says, hey, have you thought about this? So I just sort of let things unfold now instead of that go-getter attitude I needed when he was younger. I'm a little bit tired too.
Well, you do so many things. And I would love if, just wrapping things kind of in a bow for our listeners, as I listen to you, the thing that I really want, I would love to have our listeners leave with is this idea, and just clarifying a little bit, living in ego. I as people are listening, I mean, I get it, because I can specifically go back when Breck was burned and writing the books, and it was like, I'm going to overcome this, and and I'm going to kick it in the ass. And, it was like this almost aggression, which even though it seems like you're being assertive and it seems like there's also a running away of reality that's going on in that moment, because if you keep moving, you don't have to stop and think about it and sink into the loss and the grief. And then pushing through it, realizing that you now you've overtaken things, and you've become the hero of everybody's story, not just your own story, and stepping back and allowing others to step up and rise in their own story people don't see it as ego, because you think you're helping. Can you sort of explain, how do you spot that? How did you spot it and say, oh, wait, and how did you shift it?
Oh, yeah, he's speaking to my heart, because I've been so guilty of that. And, I'm not going to take away from it, because it was useful. It had its time and place. It got me moving when I was hurting so bad I couldn't breathe. It got me out of, addictions and things that were a distraction from coping, and becoming the person, or returning to the person that I really was. So it had its use, but yeah, I was so busy trying to be the hero for everyone. It was just so arrogant, because people need to be their own heroes. I mean, how are you serving someone if you're just doing it for them and having them, in my mind, look up to me? I mean, it's silly. So I started learning, because honestly, these hikes and these adventures with Anthony, or moving in with my ex-husband and his stepmom, and watching her become this beautiful mother, you know, me not having to show her how to do things, letting her find her own way, even if it was awkward or uncomfortable for both of us at times, which it certainly was, and for my ex-husband, right? But letting her become this beautiful mother is the gift, not her thinking I'm a great mother. I mean, what does that do for anybody? Stepping aside and giving room and space for my other son to have his story, and our friends and our loved ones. I've got so many amazing people in my life that hold me up, and knowing I don't do this alone, and watching all the people show up for these hikes that added a little piece to the hike where it would have never been the same and never been as successful unless this random person showed up with that skill. I mean, that is humbling, and that really put me in my place. And that's where I get to just sit back and watch the beauty unfold instead of really feeling, and I still get in there with my ego and think I need to fix, and it's probably going to go on forever.
Yeah.
But again, my awareness that I'm doing that, and my ability to pause and take a breath and go, something really beautiful might unfold here if I just let others and ask them questions about what they need and what they need to succeed, or what they need to really come to their full realization of who they are, right?
Yeah.
It's just, I'm getting better. I'm just getting better at it. And it's just so much more fulfilling, obviously. And everything's so much more successful that way too.
Yeah. I think just raising the question too, just the awareness when we invite that emotion in for tea, and then we'll just say, is it ego? Like, that's where such a great awareness to say, oh, hey, ego, I recognize you. I recognize you. I mean, just recognizing it is such a huge, powerful thing. Jill, I know that our listeners are going to probably most likely want to continue a conversation with you, directly with you. And what is the best way for them to find you? How can they connect with you?
Well, you can always connect with me on Facebook. I do a lot of connecting and socializing on a national level, especially with Duchenne through Facebook. I am trying to get back to my writing. Like I said, I took a pause from my writing for a while because I wanted to come from this this heart-centered place rather than, some of the ego place I had been coming from before. So I took a breather on my writing and my speaking and all that, but I think I'm kind of leaning back into it a little bit in a new way. So I am trying to blog on JillianCastle.com, although that's fresh and there's not a lot on there yet, but hopefully there will be now in the future. And Anthony's movie, and there's a Facebook page with the title of his movie, The Carry On, Finding Hope in the Canyon, where we post all of his new adventures and newsreels and things like that, so that you can follow him. I think he's probably a lot more fun to follow than me.
I don't know.
I do both.
Exciting to follow. I mean, truly, and I know we're wrapping up, but truly why I love following you, Jill, is because your mama, for those mamas out there, like, your mama heart speaks to me, and you are so real and so authentic. And you call out those things that speak to my heart, that I go, okay, I'm not alone in this. I'm not alone in this. We can get through this together. And I always feel like, even though I may not be there with you in person, you get it. And you're sort of sitting here, and I love that. So I want to thank you so much, because you allow people in such a graceful, beautiful, messy, awesome, amazing way to be a part of your life and Anthony's life and Oliver's life and Mama Two's life. And it's a beautiful thing, because the rest of us, it helps us to feel less fear in doing the same.
Right. Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for having me. What a beautiful conversation, as always, with you. Always.
Well,
both you ladies are wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jill. We honor you. And I want to leave our listeners with something that you said in one of the video reels. It was about, this is not a story about Anthony or me or even a community, but really it's what you can do. think about what you can do, what you can't. And I quote you there. And so that jolted me like, what is it that I can do? I didn't know I had a glass ceiling. Let me break the ceiling, because that your story, your family story, is really one about breaking our mindsets, or expanding it, challenging it, and saying we're limitless. And I just want to hold our listeners there. So everyone, our listeners, and we hope you enjoyed this conversation like Hillary and I did. I mean, it is one of humility and courage and the power of vulnerability. Continue to join us and follow us with more episodes coming up on the Decided Heart Effect. You better follow us on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and all the podcast platforms that you prefer. We're on there. Until next time, we hope that you have the courage to live with a decided heart. Thank you, everybody.